This episode of Rick and Rick is brought to you by Taskin, the first name in ultra-stylish, premium-quality travel gear like the Taskin Denali 4-wheel carry-on, featuring a sleek, jet black exterior, distinctive matte finish, exceptionally smooth rubberized wheels, and compact, lightweight form factor. Taskin Denali is one of the most stylish and versatile carry-ons anywhere. Save 30% on your next purchase when you use the promo code R&R Take 30. That's R&R Take 30 at TaskinSF.com.
From the vault, just in time for ComicCon 2026, the Ricks celebrate the life of Stan Lee in this November 2018 episode recorded just hours after the death of this comic book industry icon. Enjoy. Hey, Rick and Rick Nation, Rick Matheson here, as always, with my pal Rick Wooten.
Hey, everybody.
We're here for a Rick and Rick quick take on the news breaking today about the death of comic book legend Stan Lee at the age of 95. Holy smokes. We talked about this in July. We were reviewing Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Steve Ditko just passed away, the co-creator of Spider-Man, the artist that Stan Lee worked with. And I kid you not, I think I closed a window on my computer and it said, Stan Lee dies at 95. I knew it was coming, and it still hit.
I had the same impact as well. I knew that it was coming. We'd known that there were some health issues. We'd seen it in the news recently. But I'll tell you, it was still heartbreaking. I really, this guy to me is a hero. We talked about this before. You're a DC guy. I'm a Marvel guy. I mean, Stan Lee is the guy that brought most of the characters to life that I grew up with, that I love. Yeah. And so to me, this was a big sucker punch.
Yeah, I was a DC guy, but I did love some of the Marvels. I love the movies, of course. But when I was a kid, God, I think I was introduced to Marvel through the Spider-Man cartoon first. Spider-Man. I think that was from the 60s. Right. They had them on the afternoons when I was growing up, and they were fantastic. And many of them were based on actual stories in the comics. I ended up buying a lot of reprints when I was growing up, reprints of those early 1960s Spider-Man with Steve Ditko on pencils. And they were just so great. It was always, this unlike DC's heroes, I will say, the Marvel Comics heroes were much more human. They felt like people, and you felt like you could relate to them. Peter Parker, was a kid, and he probably had, laundry to do and needed to take his Aunt May somewhere and wanted to figure out how he can kiss Gwen Stacy. They were just fun stories. And then later, Captain America and the Falcon. I really dug that comic. And that was one of the reasons I really loved Captain America Winter Soldier, because it felt like one of those old comics. And there's lots of people who have created the superheroes and the stories that we all love, but more than any other single person, he really propelled superheroes from being, frizzy-faced teenagers, in the comic books, to conquer pop culture, define pop culture. He created, co-created, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, I think the Hulk too, Fantastic Four. The X-Men, Doctor Strange, and the Avengers. So yeah, he was born in 1922, and he got a job at Timely Comics, which later became Marvel. He was like 19 years old. It's like 1939. And this I read today, I did not know this. So according to the Hollywood Reporter, he enlisted in the Army and served in, I guess, what was called the Signal Corps, where he wrote manuals and training films with a group that included Oscar winner Frank Capra, It's a Wonderful Life, and Theodore Giselle, a.k.a. Dr. Seuss. And then after the war, he returned to the publisher and, such as the editor of Marvel Comics for freaking decades.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing when you look at the life of somebody and the impact they've had on society. He is definitely one of those people kind of at the edge. If you think about today's society, okay, so let's back up. So I was a kid of the 70s and 80s. I grew up reading nothing but Marvel Comics. Spider-Man was my hero. I was into the X-Men. It's just, again and again, Iron Man, Captain America, these things were just like a part of me growing up, and they kind of helped shape who I was. Totally. And so, to me, this is a big hit. And, I loved seeing him do these cameos in all these different movies. And, now I worry those aren't going to happen. But anyways, But Stan Lee, beyond just being a comic book guy, he had such an impact on, to your point, about popular culture today. Think about how popular his characters are in the TV shows and the movies that we love today. Think about his social commentary, right? I mean, this was the guy who created the Black Panther, who made Power Man and Iron Fist a reality. I mean, this is a guy who stood up for things that he believed in at a time where they didn't. In fact, I read an article today, again, I think it was on Mental Floss, where they talked about how Stan Lee did basically a one story thing with a drug awareness program using Spider-Man, and said, you know what? I'm going to talk about this, even though it's not okay. And at the time, there was a comic industry that
Comics
refused, who refused to say that, that's an okay thing to publish. And he did it anyways, right? Because he believed in it so much. And that's the kind of guy that he was. And it's a huge loss that we don't have him with us anymore.
Yeah. People who didn't read comics growing up won't know this, but the letters to the editor page was social media when we were little kids. And people would talk about, this issue and that issue, this person's art, this person's story or whatever. And Stan the Man had his own column in these that came out every month or whatnot. He was always just this person that was in our lives, even though at the time we didn't see him, but we knew who he was. And he always had these great catchphrases or something. He'd say, enough said. And his big thing was Excelsior. He just always had this energy about him.
That's right. And, it was called Stan Soapbox, by the way.
Stan Soapbox, yes.
That's one of his famous ones. And I'm going to read it word for word. It was on Mashable earlier. Let's lay it right on the line. Bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. And he goes on, right? And he goes on, compares it to superheroes. And he was such an incredible human being. And I'm sure in the days and the weeks to follow, somebody's going to try and knock him off his pedestal and talk about how, he had this flaw and that flaw. But frankly, look, he's a human being, and I'm sure he did have some flaws. But he was an amazing man, and I'm proud to think of him as somebody who helped shape the culture that we're in today, and has such an amazing impact.
God, do you remember the cartoons? So DC had come out with some cartoons that were doing really well in the 60s, and then Marvel kind of rushed them. Spider-Man was one of them, and that one was very well done. But they had this whole series where they had Captain America, Hulk, I think they had ones of the Avengers or whatnot, and they had to be done so inexpensively to get them done quickly that they would use stills from the comics and just kind of move them. Do you remember that?
I do.
They were still great. All of them were such a big part of afternoons. And then the Hulk TV show in the 70s was so big. And then, he moved out to Hollywood in 1980. And this was way before they all started moving out to, DC Comics has moved from Manhattan to LA, but that's been in the last 5 years. He was out in 1980 and had some early successes, some really, really, really bad movies, and then some really great movies. By this year, the 20 movies, starting with Iron Man in 2008, and all the rest of the movies that make up the Marvel Cinematic Universe have made more than $17 billion in global.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And he actually, so I guess with the 2002's Spider-Man movie, he has actually done a cameo in every movie since then.
I have some good news. I read today that he has filmed 5 more of them. There will be posthumous appearances in 5 of the films moving forward. So I was super excited.
Oh, I haven't seen that. That's fantastic. The other thing that was like heartwarming was seeing all the stars kind of come out and, pay homage to him. Robert Downey Jr. had a great one, Chris Evans, Tom Holland, Lou Ferrigno actually, threw it out, the original Hulk from the TV series, Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana. Yeah, exactly. Evangeline Lilly. I mean, it's Hugh Jackman, like over and over and over. We had these amazing stars that came out to pay homage to him. Yeah. And it just reinforces how impactful he has been on, both the movie industry, but just pop culture in general.
Yeah, that was what really walloped me because yes, I should have expected that kind of outpouring, but I was still kind of overwhelmed by the way everybody came out to say that. You don't realize how big he is. You feel it in your life, but then you realize it's with everyone. There are a couple good ones. So Chris Evans, Captain America in the movies. I swear this guy is Captain America in real life. I just kind of lived
totally.
But he tweeted, there will never be another Stan Lee. For decades, he provided both young and old with adventure, escape, comfort, confidence, inspiration, strength, friendship, and joy. He exuded love and kindness and will leave an indelible mark on so many lives. And then he ended it with Excelsior. And you kind of go, wow, like you realize what a life. Like that's what people are writing about him, as he passes on. Robert Downey Jr., Owen Aldia, rest in peace, Stan. Hugh Jackman, who plays Wolverine. We've lost a creative genius. Stan Lee was a pioneering force in the superhero universe. I'm proud to have been a small part of his legacy and to have helped bring one of his characters to life. Tom Holland, who plays Marvel's latest iteration of Spider-Man. How many millions of us are indebted to this guy? None more so than me. The father of Marvel has made so many people so incredibly happy. What a life and what a thing to have achieved. Rest in peace, Stan. And then even The Rock came out. Did you see that?
I did. I was literally looking for the quote right now. So if you have it, please read it. I thought it was fantastic.
He wrote, "What a man, what a life. When I first broke into Hollywood, he welcomed me with open arms and some very sage advice I'll forever take to heart. A true icon who impacted generations around the world. Rest in love, my friend." Thought that was great. And then Josh Brolin, he wrote a good one too. So this was the actor who plays Thanos in the Avengers Infinity Wars sequence, but also was Cable in Deadpool 2. He put Stan Lee and Dr. Seuss and Ray Bradbury. That's where it begins and ends for me. To those of us who have been so deeply affected by the humanity of his imagination, the understanding of reaching beyond our potential, and the necessity of tapping into our immeasurable imaginations, we thank you and are forever indebted. Rest in peace, dear Stan. You made our time here a better one. If someone wrote that about you, if you died, like, okay, I win,
Yeah, totally.
So
Angeline Lilly said some nice words too. She said, "Stan, more than a master of stories, you always seem like a master of living. I will look for your inspiration for the rest of my life. You live on XOXO the Wasp," which is pretty powerful too.
One of his characters, I believe. I know the Ant-Man was, and I believe the Wasp was as well. My two favorites here. One was Mark Hamill, so Star Wars.
I haven't seen this one.
Yeah, so he wrote, his contribution to pop culture was revolutionary and cannot be overstated. He was everything you hoped he would be and more. I love this man, and I will never stop missing him. They say you should never meet a childhood idol. They were wrong. R.I.P. Stan the Man, which is awesome. Then the best one, it was the first one I saw, actually. This was the thing that made me go look on Twitter. So Seth Rogen tweeted, "Thank you, Stan Lee, for making people who feel different realize they are special." And that gets to the heart of all his characters. They were all struggling with things and had to overcome challenges, but had unique gifts and learned how to become heroes, sometimes against their will. That's what made the story so compelling, and why finally generations are waking up to it with all these amazing movies that they've been churning out.
Yeah, can you imagine this guy? I mean, he was a veteran in World War II, right? Just like, we're not talking about Korea, Vietnam, Middle East. We're talking World War II. And he came from that, and he helped tell the story of America through those years, whether it was through, Captain America or through the X-Men, through Spider-Man, all the way through the years, helped adapt comics through the decades. And today, here we are in 2018. And he is still relevant. He is still making an impact on society. It's just absolutely amazing. I wish I could say my life will be like that, and I know it won't. I mean, it's so amazing.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that today when I was reading. It's just like, God, whatever our lives are and the people that we interact with and the industries we work in and just our everyday life, to be remembered that way or with those kinds of words.
Here's one that, gets exactly at that. Here is from DC Comics competition, right? DC Comics, they say, again, this is their tweet. "He changed the way we look at heroes, and modern comics will always bear his indelible mark. His infectious enthusiasm reminds us why we all fell in love with these stories in the first place. Excelsior, Stan." Wow. I mean, that is freaking amazing, right? Here they are.
Yeah,
exactly. The biggest competitors, DC, Marvel. That's like, two football teams competing against each other, and they took the time to say thank you and recognize his contribution.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
I don't know about you, but I'm certainly going to miss his presence, whether it's within the movies or within the pop culture or within, the Comic-Con conventions, having Stan Lee around.
Yeah, I know I'll look back when I'm old and still be able to remember Stan the Man and all those early comics that are my first comics anyway, in the Marvel universe, and just devouring them. All those characters were spectacular.
One of the other ones I thought was pretty awesome was Jimmy Kimmel. I don't know if you saw
No,
this.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, so Jimmy Kimmel drew a picture at age 7, and he said, this is a Twitter post that he did with the picture, and he said, at age 7, I drew this weird portrait of Stan Lee and asked my mom to send it to him. Thankfully, she didn't, because 30 plus years later, I got to give it to the great one in person.
Wow.
Thanks for all the fun, Stan. Excelsior.
Wow.
And it's this ridiculous portrait of Stan Lee with this mustache and, looking totally like he's out of the 70s.
All right. So rest in peace, Stan Lee. You win. You had an awesome life, and we appreciate everything that you contributed to ours.
That's right. You will be missed, but you will also be appreciated.
All right, listeners, thanks so much for joining us. And I guess we'll close with Excelsior.